people expect a lot from leaders, and they're also humans. You cannot have it all. That also the collective leadership strength is very interesting, because if you would also be much more focused on that operational excellence, you also have problems.
Tom, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
I must say, after 800 episodes, you have the most impressive chair that we've ever had. I feel like I'm on your game show.
Right. It's the other way around. Yeah. I want to impress people with my chair.
Yeah, I love it. That's we just end the interview there. Just leave it like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about you personally and your journey and the role that you're in now at Mercer.
So my journey. So I'm a Belgian origin. My ambition was I wanted to be a professional basketball player. That was my passion. I watch basketball now. So if I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is watch an NBA.
The highlights from the day before.
The highlights from the day before. So this is exciting time because these are playoffs time. So that was my first, and that clearly didn't work out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And so I studied sociology. The first 10 years of my career was a bit like trial and error. I did some work in the academic sphere. I thought that nothing for me. It's too specialized. Then I moved to executive search. Felt that wasn't for me. I worked for IBM internal HR roles. I thought that wasn't for me. And then I discovered the world of consultancy, and I felt that that's much more me. So I almost for 10 years, a decade in Cubics. It's Cubics, which is Stylogy now. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's like a psychometric assessment company, UK based, but an international dimension for 10 years. And then I almost worked for 10 years for PwC. Different roles at a stint in New York for 2 years. And then managing director of the human capital division. And then I felt like I needed an adventure. So I moved quite recently. I moved to Dubai.
Nice.
To work for Mercer. And my role basically here is setting up the whole, like the executive leadership assessment part of Mercer. It might need a bit of explanation what that exactly means.
We can get into it.
Yeah, you can get into it, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing the story. I grew up wanting to be a professional ice hockey player.
Ah, really?
Right. I played ice hockey, but it's just not big in Europe and in the UK, or especially in the UK. Yeah. So I realized that once I can't make a living playing it, then I stopped. Yeah. So, and I also know how it feels to either stay up very late to watch or to watch the highlights the next day. And that's my co-founder Shane also played professional ice hockey. And we grew up together. So I kind of understand it from a different lens. You're the basketball, but we're the ice hockey side of that. So, well, that was a lot of information in one go there. You know, I would say, like, what were some of the learnings that you took from your experience as a practitioner that have helped you the most, would you say, in the consulting world? Because you've lived both sides, and I think there's a lot of shared knowledge and skills and experience that can really help people, right?
Yeah, agree. So you learn a lot from being inside a company before becoming a consultant. On the other hand, I do feel there's a lot of parallel, because also at an internal HR position, you do consult in business and around people and organizational topics. So I don't, I sometimes try to make a difference where I feel like, same. but from a different perspective. You have
Sure.
internal clients, we have external clients, but it's very useful, and I think I can only encourage people to see both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah. The reason I say that is many successful HR leaders that I speak to, they have had the journey like you, where they've gone in and outside. And they always tell me that they're having the perspective of working on both has been something that's really helped shape them as a leader in the work that they do. They have much more appreciation for the work that happens from the work that happens on both sides.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the time, they start in consultancy,
yes,
in the Big Four or HR consultancies, and then they go to the internal role. Most of the time, I did the other way.
Yeah, but it's interesting because a lot of the CHROs at the end of their career then go into consulting.
Oh God, yeah.
Right, so
Exactly.
it's like their retirement plan. I mean, I wouldn't say retirement plan, but you know what I mean. Like they kind of like I always see the shift whenever someone says, "Hey, Chris, I'm like I'm retiring." Then I turn on LinkedIn and then I see they're at one of the Big Four consulting companies. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So tell us more. Obviously, you've moved to Dubai, which is pretty cool. Also, a massively growing market for everyone, right? Very exciting times, huge opportunity. I'm seeing it.
Good time to be here.
Yeah, great time to be there. Tell us more about the work that you're doing and focus.
So my main focus is like around leadership, trying to understand what is good leadership, how to assess leaders, to select them, to promote them, and how do we develop leaders on an individual level, but also on the team level and even on organization level. So that's what keeps me busy. That's what I'm reflecting on. That's my passion. Very concretely, I'm building actually, we're doing already a lot of executive assessments, so like C-suite level selection. But I'm building our global solution that we are light doing new stuff, exciting stuff.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about executive assessments, though, we obviously hear that a lot from partners, clients, etc. What makes what you do different to other assessments out there or approaches that people are taking?
Why we're better than our competitors? Is that your question?
Basically.
Basically, yeah.
No, because our audience are senior HR executives in the world's leading global brands, right? They work. I'm sure many of them are already clients of yours.
Yeah.
So I want to understand, based on your research, what you're seeing now. Again, what leaders look like when I started my career versus now. Very different. The type of competencies, the skills. It's shifting. So I would love to get your as someone who's so close to it. I'd love to hear more about what you're seeing, and obviously I'm sure that's going to be reflected in your offering.
I will not do a sales. I will not do a sales pitch here. But there is But what I mean, there are a couple of things to say around executive assessment. I think the first is. A lot of looking at we need to do an assessment, full stop. But that's only part of making a successful selection of a new C-suite executive profile. You need to look at what do you need, and that needs, because it's not the job of the board members to select a new CEO, CFO, CHRO, etc. And that needs and it sounds so normal, but it's actually super important to have a serious conversation of what do you need. So I told you I worked for IBM. At a certain point, IBM was doing really bad back in the 90s. Sorry. And that was a time a couple of board members said, we don't need a technology guy or woman. We need someone with customer focus, execution capability, business acumen. And that generated a big discussion. And finally, they decided we don't need technology. We need and they chose Lou Gerstner. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Mm-hmm.
But he brought the company from a 8 billion loss to a 3 billion profit in a very quick time. So selecting what is the success profile is very important. That's one. Secondly, a very clear process that is unbiased and get rid of all the noise. I think we're familiar with bias, but noise is, if you're familiar with the work of Kahneman, it's if my sports team wins and I need to select someone and I'm influenced because I'm bad, or the other way around. So that's the noise. So you have to think about the process, also make sure that everyone likes. Then you have the assessment, and then you have the post work. That means only 1 out of 5 executive assessment selections fail, or are successful, whatever you want to do. So it's like a flip of a coin almost. So within 18 months, 1 out of 2 executives leave the company. So bad selection. So you need to do some individual coaching, team coaching, because people underestimate, but it's a hard job be an executive. So, and it's not easy. So both from an organizational point, we want to support, as from the leader itself. So that's one. So you need an integrated approach to executive assessment. I think that's very important. The second one is, okay, what kind of problems are the leaders? What are they focusing as problems? So you need to understand that. And where you see a difference, and it needs a bit of explanation, is that they are confronted with complex problems, which is different from complicated. And it's an important nuance. Just stop me or kick in if I'm.
I would love you to know. Please break it down. Yeah,
go ahead.
What the difference? Please break that down. The difference between complex and
complicated can be super complicated in the sense that a car, you drive a car, it breaks, you go to the garage, they disassemble, they put the new stuff, and they reassemble, and off you go. And a car can be super complicated, so you need engineers to understand that. But still, it's predictable, it's solvable.
Mm-hmm.
While the problems executives are dealing with are not complicated, they're complex. They're unsolvable almost. AI is unsolvable, or are unsolvable, and that has an impact on their supply chain, etc. So there's a lot of what we call complex or wicked problems that they have to deal with. And if you're, as a leader, still think in complicated problems, then you set up for failure. So you need a leadership paradigm, that can help leaders to solve these complex problems. And then we look into, if I go too theoretic, just stop me, Chris. Then I look in the capability to navigate extremes of this, what we call paradoxical thinking. From empowering people to being directive, from having a strong opinion to finding win-win solutions. And there's a lot of theory about this paradoxical leadership theory. And it's not new. So it started at Lego in the 80s, but more and more research is done. And there's some findings that it's really related to job performance.
Is that the term paradoxical leadership? Is that the terminology?
Some call it versatility leadership.
Okay.
There are different wording, but it's called paradox theory.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so that's the term. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's important. So you need to understand. If you assess execs that they have that paradoxical mindset to be successful.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important to understand what are the problems they face. It's complex, so you need to be able to switch. There's even there's neuroscience is also pretty hype.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some authors who research the brain, and so the leaders who can switch quickly from one end to another are the most successful. And it's important. So it's not being mediocre. So it's not being a bit empathic or being a bit directive. It's fully embrace being empathic. It's fully embracing being directive. So
I love that.
So that's a bit the the theory around approaches, where I feel very passionate about.
Yeah. As a founder of a business or multiple businesses, I can relate as a CEO, like of having to be pulled between the two, and it's so tough to do that. And I've already learned something from this episode. I think it's really important. So
great.
I think the difference between complicated and complex is never something I really thought about until you just explained it in a very clear way. By the way, thank you. And I do think I'm spending too much time on the complicated versus the complex. And I need to delegate more. Because you're right, the engine's broken. We know how to fix it. That's complicated, but shouldn't require Chris. I think I should be focusing my time on the complex. As well, and I'm going to have a chat with the team after, because I think you just you opened up some windows for me.
You're gonna delegate more work.
I do, and I think I just never really had the words to express it. You just gave me the language to have the conversation. So this is something I've been thinking for a while, but sometimes it's difficult to have the conversation until you have the language, and you just gave me the language to be able to do that. And you are right, I am focused mainly right now on, of course, AI as my complex. We just launched the world's first AI co-pilot for HR executives. We launched it 3 weeks ago, and I was working on that for around 2.5 years as well.
Chris, I lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we're back.
Yeah, no worries. I was saying, for me, I've spent the last 2.5 years building our AI co-pilot. We built the world's first AI co-pilot for HR executives to upskill and reskill HR executives using our co-pilot. So it's trained on 10,000 hours of content, our podcasts, our webinars, our workshops, our events, as well as our integrations with our partners like McKinsey, Boston Consulting, Harvard Business School, Harvard Business Review, and our expert coaches like Marshall Goldsmith and Dave Ulrich and others. So we've trained all of the model on all of their content to give instant answers to any HR question. And then, of course, the integrations with all of their HR technology that integrates and brings their own content into the platform. But that was a very complex.
I can imagine. For me, I can only imagine.
And we failed many, many times.
That's typical for complex.
We tried to.
It never stops. It's not linear.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. Like, we tried to build the first model before OpenAI even existed, and spent a lot of money and got nowhere, as well, because we were too ahead because my goal was like, hey, we have all of this information. That's not the challenge. Everyone has access to information. The challenge is, how do we provide insights in the flow of work and help free up time for those leaders and managers and give them the tools that they need using AI. And that, for me, that was the mechanism I could see as the delivery tool. And now everyone's talking about it as the tool, but it allowed us to be the first to market, because I was focusing on that 3 years plus ago, before it was mainstream, like now. So I love that. In terms of the, you mentioned earlier, which was quite a shocking stat, that 1 in 2 of those leaders leave, or fail, as it were, whatever words you want to use. What were the things that you've identified as the, obviously the reasons that, because I'm sure you've tracked this, to see that these are the things, the top reasons that they leave or they fail. What were some of those?
There are many, of course, but one that jumps to my mind is, I'll give you an example. Are you familiar with the Boeing catastrophe? So Boeing recruited a new CEO.
Oh, I do know. Sorry, Boeing. Yes.
Boeing.
Yes, sorry.
Sorry for my pronunciation.
No, it's fine. Sorry for my misunderstanding.
Airplane builder.
Of course I know. Yeah. So my co-founder of Atlas, the co-pilot, Guillermo, is the former chief learning officer of Boeing. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So
so yeah, but
that company.
carry on, because
Yeah, we carry
carry on.
on.
It's a good example for everyone listening.
Yeah. Yeah. So they hired a guy called Calhoun, new CEO, coming from General Electric. Probably he's a really good executive. No? So it's not that down. But he came in and he didn't really. I mean, first of all, he wasn't an engineer, which was also a bit of not. I mean, I was already something. But what he didn't do, he didn't embrace the safety first quality culture uh, at the company. And of course, if something happens with an airplane, you lose your reputation. So they calculated, so they lost 40% of their shares
Yeah.
since he came in, which is kind of like, I don't know exactly, 24 billion worth. So, I mean, huge loss because they selected the wrong one. And it's not that you always have to have this cultural fit. That's not the point, but there's some key values that you do need to embrace. So this the organizational context and assessing for organizational context is for me a um, very important element. Don't say that there are many others, but
Yeah.
that's one.
No,
That's
I love
starting
that
there.
because well, the story behind that obviously is they wanted to get the plane to market
Yeah,
before their competition, right?
yeah,
And ignore the health and safety
yeah,
part aspect of their culture and
right,
values. It doesn't matter. We need to win, revenue at all costs. We need to
yeah,
build the plane and get it to. Don't worry
yeah,
about the safety, the safety
yeah. No, don't
assessments. Right, we
worry.
need to get
Just,
it out, and then I think everyone knows what happened.
yeah,
Um,
short
uh,
term
yeah,
thinking.
short-term thing,
Yeah,
and in actually cost them, as you said, more than they would have gained by
yeah,
doing that. And I see that happen a lot where even CHROs who go into businesses who the ones that are successful probably spend the first year just building relationships with leaders,
exactly.
understanding the culture, really embedding themselves in the
Yeah,
organization before making any meaningful change, right? And the
exactly.
ones that fail are the ones that come in and immediately
Yeah,
try and change
yeah.
things up because I need to make a change and ignore everything you've just mentioned.
Ex- yeah, exactly. And of course, you cannot underestimate. There's also a lot of pressure of the new person coming in
Of course,
in
to
in
deliver.
making a difference. So
Yeah,
you need to be strong to take your 1 year of observing and understanding, etc.
yeah.
But that's definitely the pressure to have like quick wins. It's super high, and
It's
you
a
need some
balance, right?
quick
You
wins.
gotta
But
have like
yeah,
you
exactly.
have to deliver on the day to days whilst also having your head in
Uh,
in the future. It's like
a, a,
again
a paradox. A
like you
paradox.
said, the paradoxical leadership, right? And
Yeah,
it's interesting because my co-founder Shane and I we kind of separate that in a way where he's as a founder is more focused in the now and the delivery of our product and making sure we have customer success, customer delight with the work that we do. And I'm kind of always with my head in the future. And we come
yeah,
together and talk every week to share each other's feedback. But that's always been worked well for us
yeah,
because we're grounded in
yeah.
delivering excellence in our work now, but we're never disrupted because I'm always looking at
The long
I'm
term.
always trying to break things
Yeah,
or intentionally
yeah.
and constantly trying to challenge the status quo and disrupt ourselves.
Uh,
And I think that's been why we've been successful so far
uh.
to
But
do that.
that's also an interesting point because we look a bit too much at individual leadership, while again, this complexity, these paradoxes, embracing both ends, you have to look at it. You cannot, I mean, people expect a lot from leaders and they're also human. So you cannot have it all. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
also the collective leadership strength is very interesting because if you would also be much more focused on that operational excellence, you also have a problem. So
yeah. I'm seeing a lot of companies now focus more than I've ever heard on the sort of team coaching, as opposed to
rightfully so.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more now focus, even the companies that we work with as partners, like ASUP and BetterUp and Beamery, etc. There's a real thirst for the team coaching beyond just the individual executive coaching. And it makes sense based on what you just said. Everyone has their different strengths or weaknesses. And once you recognize those, it becomes really exciting. And Shane and I have done that. We understand where our strengths and weaknesses are, and we only spend our time and energy on the areas where we can have the most impact on the business. And that means sometimes I'm stepping away from the current to look into the future to make sure the business is going to be prepared for where we're going. What are the main competencies that you're seeing now that a leader needs to be successful in this current disruptive landscape where there's so many external factors also facing us politically, like there's so much, pandemics, etc. What are some of the skills and competencies you're seeing that you need to have to be successful as a leader?
Yeah, good question. Things that come to mind is like ecosystem thinking, in the sense that there's so many stakeholders involved internally, but also external. So it's not enough anymore that you think profit. You have to think community, planet, sustainability. So and that means this broader thinking than just like, get our profit. I mean, which is still important, clearly, but it's that stakeholder thing is becoming more and more important.
Yeah,
that's one that comes to mind.
I've never heard that before, by the way. Sorry to interrupt you. No, like
okay.
That, like super interesting. I speak to
I'm throwing the buzzwords here.
No, I love that. Like I speak to coaches and leaders every day, and no one's ever said to me ecosystem thinking. But it makes so much sense, like in terms of, like you said, trying to juggle the internal, the external, shareholders. Like there's just so many community, exactly, sustainability, like you said. Like there's so many factors now. Like maybe there was one or two of those in traditional leadership when I 20 years ago when I started this. Now you're having to manage all of those at the same time. So I love that ecosystem thinking. I mean, that's great. I love that.
So that's one. Another one that I'm still struggling with is the digital first mindset. Because in one way, digital transformation is important. I fully agree. The question is, at that level, is it more about the innovation and making sure that you create a climate where people innovate and think digital, or do you need to be digital yourself? I'm not sure, Chris, to be honest.
I think it's again about.
I have this discussion, but
you don't have to be the expert, but you have to have enough in order to make an informed decision and delegate. Like, I mean, I think maybe people misconceive it, but that they need to be an expert and upskill themselves to be digitally capable. I don't think everyone has to be. I think you just need to know enough as a leader to be able to have a conversation, or at the very minimum, you need to surround yourself with those people with that knowledge and experience, and lead with humility. I was interviewing Lego's chief HR officer a few months ago, and a year ago now. Sorry. And I said to him, Lauren, you've never worked a day in HR before, because he was in operations and sales before, and then he became.
And he was at Lego.
Yes.
Oh, but that's because Lego was the first company who started with paradoxes back in the 80s.
Oh, really? Interesting.
It seems that paradoxes is the team here.
Yeah, because it was they hired a chief people officer that's never done HR ever before, right? And I asked Lauren and I said, how do you keep up with all of the technical side? And he said, I don't need to, because I have my team. So, it's the same. Does he need to know all the technical digital elements of all of the products and solutions? No.
Yeah.
He surrounded himself with the team. He needs to know enough,
Yeah.
but not all of it. What do you
Yeah.
think? What does it mean to you? If someone says like, what does it mean to be digital first leader? How would you describe that? What does it mean to be a digital first leader?
It's more like thinking opportunities, thinking what can we do differently. It's like you said in the beginning. You like to challenge the status quo. It's that kind of thinking rather than looking at opportunities, looking at
I think it's
innovation.
nothing's changed, but the medium's changed, and the new medium is digital. So I think the thinking and the decision making around it, to your point, is the same, but now the new medium is technology, is AI, is etc.
Yeah,
But the way in which you make decisions around that doesn't change because of the technology.
doesn't change.
So I don't know if that even made sense, but that's kind of the way I look at it. And that's going to continue to evolve. You know, it happens with the internet, right? And now it's AI. It happened with social media. Everyone needs to know about social media, right? Like, and all of the businesses were like, we need to know social media marketing, right? So there's always going to be this evolution of disruption, but I think the way in which you make decisions and the way you think about it, that's not going to change as much. If that,
I agree.
yeah. What? Really random question, but what are some of the common misconceptions that you hear about assessments?
There's a lot. So there's a lot of negative connotation with
Yes,
assessment.
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So there's a lot of. So if you talk to the like my peers, and it's something sometimes like so. There are a lot of misconceptions. Sometimes it's among us. There's like sometimes it's a religion. Like we like if you talk about this psychometric tool, it's like like worshiping. So for me, it is clearly not, as long as it's reliable and valid. It's a tool to have discussion. So I think that's important. So a lot of misconception is around let's manipulate the tool and how you can manipulate assessments. I think for me, it's important. And what makes a strong assessment is that you have different data points. So it's not only a psychometric tool, but you do other stuff just to have a more rounded review on people. But there's a lot of negativity around it. Yeah, definitely. And sometimes rightfully so, because it's sometimes also used in a totally wrong.
Yeah, because one of the things we're doing outside of HR, the work we do, we also have a executive search side that we do.
Yeah.
We don't. It isn't really a huge part of what we the business, but because we have such a large global network, 200,000 plus HR executives, we know everyone.
Makes sense.
We know everyone.
You have the network.
Yeah. I either get two reactions from CHROs. So when they reach out to me, either for their own role, that they're looking for a role as a CHRO, or a CEO reaches out to me saying that they're looking for a CHRO, that either fully bought into assessments or they're fully against. There's no middle ground because we don't want to do they either really they're a waste of time, waste of money, we don't do it, or we have to do an assessment. It's essential, and I'm like it's always surprised me. I'm like there's no one extreme or the other.
That's very true. But for me, what is important, I think we always say we want to have a red carpet treatment towards candidate, and that means you treat them very open. You still have the discussions, the interaction. That's important, and you give them a lot of feedback. So even if they're not selected, they get something out of it. That's for me very, very important. And a lot of this black and white is also because some of them have really bad experience, Like they spend the whole day and they don't get any feedback. They're in the dark of what did they do well. So yeah, not all of our competitors are as
Okay, that
professional
makes
as it
sense.
should
So
be.
they've gone through that process, and because they've done all of that work,
Yeah.
and then they're not even given
No,
the gift of
not
feedback.
even give. No, no,
No,
exactly the gift of feedback.
yeah,
Yeah,
I would be pretty
yeah.
frustrated too.
I mean, I will be super frustrated and
Yeah,
come on.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
What are you most excited about? Obviously, the new opportunity, but in terms
yeah,
of the work that
definitely.
you're doing, in terms of the specific work you're doing, and everything we kind of discussed, what are the things that you're most excited about that you're focused on?
I'm super excited about the whole new offering. So we're creating now also a paradoxical psychometric tool. So that's what we're working
Oh, I'd
on.
love to see that. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So that's like super interesting. So very excited about that. Very excited about the yeah, bringing it global. So that working with Asia, Latin America, Middle East.
Hmm.
Very excited about that. I'm also pretty new in so I worked here before in the region. Uh, but for me, it's also a
Mm.
learning to deal with. I'm working a lot in Saudi now, so it's exciting
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Well, given all of the we've been like firstly thank you for sharing all of those. You kind of I've learned a lot today on the podcast, let alone
Yeah,
the
yeah.
listeners as well. I've got a lot to think about now. First, it's a tough time for leaders, right? It's I
Super
feel
tough.
like
It's a hard job.
I don't think
Yeah,
it's ever been the more I don't know, every era has its own challenges, but I feel like now, like you mentioned, with the ecosystem of challenges, that I feel like maybe that's the first time in history where we are actually having to deal with so many different external factors as well. What advice would you give to leaders um, who are obviously going through a tough time right now, including HR executives, because the landscape
yeah,
of HR, talking about needing to become digital first, right?
yeah.
Like is the evolving role of a HR executive. They're constantly having to disrupt themselves and upskill and reskill themselves. So, what advice would you give to them?
I don't think it's original, but always look at the mirror, look at yourself, create that self awareness constantly. Ask for feedback because at a certain level, the problem sometimes is, Chris, you don't get any feedback. No, it doesn't come to you. So,
Yeah,
and then you don't know what you're doing right or wrong. Ask for help. I mean, I think that's also sometimes because they expect to be strong. I mean, ask for help. You're human. You're not a robot. Put yourself there, vulnerable. Cannot do any harm.
yeah,
I mean, don't overdo it because that might lose some credibility. But just ask for help. Put yourself out there.
yeah.
Be real. And yeah,
Oh, I love that. Like,
keep.
I
Yeah,
asked one of the CHROs who are attending who's been to four of our events recently, why do you keep coming? And she said to me, "It's because it's the only place I get honest feedback. Because internally, as a CHRO, she's not getting that feedback, and part of that is that she's not asking for it. You know, and also, are you creating the environment where people feel safe to give their feedback?
yeah,
So I think she was very open to that part. But at our events, the other CHROs are very happy to say we completely disagree,
yeah,
and
yeah.
this is our view and perspective, right? And that's kind of one of
Uh,
that's why we create a safe environment to have
uh,
those conversations. And I love your point about the reflection. The self awareness piece is one of the
it's
most
key
important things. I had this
for you.
conversation with Shane recently, my co-founder, around any of the successful leaders or just people in general that we meet. That's one of the highest skills that they have is they're very good at self-reflection and then knowing when to say I'm wrong or I've made a
Yeah.
mistake. And
I'm so happy you mentioned that. So I do assessment. I mean, I don't know how many assessments I did. The one thing is self awareness, self criticism. If you don't have that, forget about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not ready to grow. You're not ready for the next step. Yeah, I mean, that's the fundamental.
Yeah. It's hard to, let's be honest though, it's really hard. Like to
It is.
remove your ego
Yeah.
and to not take it personal and to not attach your self-worth
Yeah.
to the role. Or
Yeah.
because that's some people, they're wrapped up so tightly with it that
Yeah.
they can't separate that and look in the mirror to your point of view,
Yeah.
that it's really difficult to they just can't look in the mirror because they don't want to do that as well, and I've experienced that too, and it's not always great to hear the feedback, but it's so valuable.
No,
It's hard.
Not fun to hear that. Exactly.
As well.
Yeah, and I think maybe a last one is like carve out time to do that self-reflection. That's so busy, and you're like in this
Yeah.
constantly going.
That's a good point. This isn't something that just happens. You have to be intentional about making that. We book out most Wednesdays, and I don't have any meetings on that day. And then most of the time, I will basically grab a couple of hours, or at least an hour to reflect. And if I didn't purposely do that, I just wouldn't do it. I would have another meeting, I'd have another call, whatever, another thing, and it
lose your creativity as well.
Yeah. I have a list of questions that I have, an Excel spreadsheet, really old school. And it's something I learned from Marshall Goldsmith. And it's a list of questions that I look at the end of each day. And it says things like, did I do my best to show up?
Yeah, I know. I read that there's a book that he wrote about that one.
Did I do my best to be show up for my daughter? Did I do my best to take care of my mental health? And I just give myself a a little tick.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the technique.
Yeah, and it's such a simple.
I love that.
It's the most. It's not. It's just Excel, like with some with questions and some markers, and then you can see because you put colors. If I have a red week, I can see I didn't do great that week, and then I can see all yellow, and it's just something as a self-reflection. Did I do my best to give myself grace, to show myself grace today, and not give myself a hard time? Just like those simple questions that takes 5 minutes to read and do is such an amazing way to end your day. And then you just kind of reflect and say, okay, I can see for 4 days in a row I didn't go to the gym. Right? Or and you can just very simply take action on that as well. And you can add whatever questions you want in there, personal, professional as well. But listen, before I let you go, Tom, where can people reach you? If they want to reach out and say hi, where's the best place to reach you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, perfect. And they can get hold of you there.
Yeah.
And is there a specific a website, landing page for the new business?
Soon.
Okay. You leave it to the suspense. Okay. All right. Well, I'll when you do have that, I will put it in the show notes. So everyone listening right now.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
End of July.
Okay.
I commit myself to end of July.
Perfect. Yeah. So there'll be a link to connect with Tom in the chat, in the description. Whatever platform you're listening, it'll be in the description, and then we'll also add a link to the website. But
fantastic.
It's good getting to know you. I appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully I can come out and visit you and say hi.
You're most welcome. It's a bit hot now, so we might.
I'll wait until it cools down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, more than welcome. Let me know if you're around.
All the best. Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure, Chris.
Thank you.
It was a good conversation. Love it. Take care.
Take care.